Hey guys, Dr. Sean here. This morning we're going to talk about leaky gut syndrome. I had a question about this a while back, and so I kind of drew up a little drawing here. Not the greatest artist in the world. Sorry about that. But here's a little face. We chew our little food particle, and we swallow that food particle, and down the tubes it goes. That little food particle gets into your stomach. Now, when you get into your stomach here, your enzymes have to break this down. But the enzymes aren't always there. We're going to do a video on that later on, how they get there. But the enzymes are borrowed, for some degree, from the body. And you borrow hydrogens and chlorides and make stomach acid. It starts to break that food down. Now, if that food does not get broken down properly, this is where we get into the problem of what they call a leaky gut syndrome. That food then starts to move through the intestinal tract. It leaves the stomach, and it goes into the small intestines. Now, once it's in the small intestines, that food tries to be digested further. But if your liver and your gallbladder and your pancreas are a little overworked and they're not doing their job, and you don't have enough enzymes for digestion to occur, now you get a problem. Now the body has yeast and bacteria and little funguses. I call them little critters. The critters are hanging out in the gut, and they start to eat this food. As it works further and further into the intestine, undigested, now that food particle becomes a problem. It starts to create a waste product. The food itself can rot if it's not digested properly, or ferment. You'll see the bugs themselves, as they're eating that food, the yeast and things, they start to produce a stool. Now, where we get in trouble is when your intestine starts to distend and bloat. You get that swollen belly effect, right? So you look at that thing and think, how is this possible? The intestine starts to stretch, and the lining of the intestine starts to become irritated. It gets swollen and sore. Now you get little micro tears, for lack of better words. And the body has to try to reabsorb things that are not properly being broken down in the intestines. So these things start to leak into the body. They start coming back inside. It can occur in the large intestine after stuff has been broken down all the way. It can occur in part of the small intestine. Anywhere along this tract, you can get into trouble. Now, when these food particles start to leak back inside, and this is where it gets interesting. As that particle leaks in, and we're going to take this section right here and kind of draw it out. Now, once this thing leaks in, we'll make a little window box. You've got this little food particle that leaked inside. All of a sudden now, your white blood cells come along and say, wait a minute, you're not food any longer. You're not supposed to be here. And so they go after it. Well, the problem is, it's no big deal if it's one time or two. But if that's happening every time you eat, because you have an incompetent digestive system, or a digestive system that's just simply overworked and can't do its job anymore, you don't produce enough stomach acid. And we'll talk about that in another video sometime. If this starts to happen, all of a sudden it's like precipitation in a thundercloud. In the body, they call it flocculation. You get so many of these little particles and waste products and debris that are collectively called endocrine. They leak across the gut wall, for lack of better words. As they get in there, they start to get heavy. It's like putting salt in a glass of water. If you have a glass and it's full to the top and you start adding salt to it, and all of a sudden it starts dissolving. It's no big deal. But over time, if you keep adding salt, it starts to pile at the bottom. The water can't hold it any longer. And that's what a leaky gut really is. It's an auto-intoxication. You're poisoning yourself from the GI tract inward. You're overwhelming your immune system. It can't keep up with all the stuff coming across the gut wall. It gets taxed and exhausted. And all of a sudden you start getting this stuff that's floating in what they call your extracellular fluid. The ECF. That's what your joints are bathed in. That's what your cells are floating around in. That's the fluid outside of the blood. And what ends up happening is that you get so much of this debris and gunk floating around in there that it starts to rain out of solution. Now, where it falls determines on what they tell you. If it falls into muscle tissue, you'll hear the term fibromyalgia. If it falls onto a bony surface in large amounts, all of a sudden you have osteoarthritis and you were never athletic. You don't know why your knees are wearing out. You don't know why you're getting joint pain. Or they'll call it a rheumatism. The new phrase that you're hearing now is potential for lupus being tied to this. So when we look at a leaky gut syndrome, the key to it is find it, fix it, heal it. Do a 24-hour UA. Look and see, do I actually have this process going on? Look for the signs and symptoms of digestive failure. Gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, irritability, restlessness, insomnia, headaches. Those are all things that are tied to this. When you find that answer, you'll find your cause. You find the cause, you'll fix your problem. I'm Dr. Sean.